There are places on this earth whispered about in hushed voices, temples buried beneath vines, forest groves no longer named on maps, stone circles hidden in the fold of mountains. These sites are marked by ancient warnings, etched into rock, spoken through generations or forgotten altogether. But around them, a pattern repeats like clockwork. Children vanish without trace. No struggle, no witnesses. Just absence, sudden and total. Tonight, we unseal an archive authorities would rather keep closed. Take the Yana Range in Montana. In 1973, 3 siblings disappeared near the ruins of a supposedly native temple. One archaeologists say never existed. The children were playing near a stream when the youngest wandered off. The others followed. None returned. Local tribal elders later refused to speak to the press. One reportedly murmured, "They stepped where no child should step." In 1981, a 5-year-old girl vanished during a family hike through the moss-draped ruins of St. Helene's Monastery in rural Wales. Her last words were recorded by her brother, "They're calling me from the stones." The family insisted they heard no voices, no signs of distress, until it was too late. These are not isolated cases. From mossy step pyramids in Guatemala to desolate moors hiding monolithic dolmens in northern Europe, missing persons reports cluster around ancient sacred spaces. Parents search in desperation, but investigators can never quite explain why the trail always goes cold near those sites. It's as though the ground itself swallows them. Some of these places are linked to gods long abandoned, gods that demanded youth, purity, blood. Others are tied to ritual, burial, or transitions into the afterlife. In nearly all cases, folklore insists that children are forbidden to enter, either because their innocence attracts something hungry, or because it draws them in. As we peel back layers of history and myth, we find something far older than any official report. And far more terrifying. This episode is not about fairy tales. It is not about legends. It is about real children, real families, real silence from authorities who quietly fence off these zones, labeling them unstable or off-limits due to preservation. But those warnings? They're older than government tape. And they're not meant to protect the place, they're meant to protect you. Every case we explore tonight has a location, a name, the time. And every one of them ends the same way. The moment a child stepped into the threshold of something once called sacred, they cease to exist in any record that matters. That if you're looking for answers, you won't find them on the surface. You'll have to go deeper, where maps blur, where stories split into shadow. Welcome to the archive of vanished children. They disappeared near places people were told never to enter. Chapter 1. The temple beneath the pines in the northeastern tip of Washington state, buried deep within Colville National Forest, lies a glade that's never officially marked. Locals call it the Stillness, but old tribal records refer to it as Nataka, loosely translating to the place of breathless trees. It's a spot where no wind moves, where no birds sing, and where, according to stories stretching back centuries, children should never go. In July 1992, a 7-year-old boy named Miles Craven vanished while camping there with his family. They had set up their tent near a clearing surrounded by ancient pine trunks, massive, dark-needled giants older than any town nearby. His parents recall letting him chase fireflies just before dusk. He was gone within 5 minutes. No scream. No snapped branch. No sign of struggle. Only a stuffed bear left behind, sitting upright at the edge of the tree line, facing the forest as though watching something walk away. Authorities launched a massive search involving dogs, helicopters, and over 100 volunteers. But the scent trail ended at the tree line. No footprints. No clothing. No body. It was as if the forest refused to give up its secrets. Days later, an elder from the Kalispel tribe was quietly brought in to assist, unofficially. He said nothing at first, only stood at the glade's edge. When asked what he saw, he replied, "This place once had a door. It opened when blood was offered. That door is not closed. Not for a child." That statement was never included in police reports. Decades before Miles disappeared, another child had vanished from the same area. In 1960, a girl named Eliza Barnes was lost during a school picnic. Her classmates claimed she'd wandered into the pines, following a deer none of the adults could see. They said the animal glowed like smoke in the sun. Eliza was never seen again. What connects these children, Miles and Eliza, isn't just the location. It's what locals whisper about the land, that beneath that forest clearing buried under moss and root are the remnants of a non-human temple. Not made of brick, not made by hand, but grown, shaped from living bark and twisted vines. One hunter swore he found part of it in 2004. He described an opening in the forest floor, ringed by bones that had been woven into the roots. When he reached for his flashlight to look inside, the ground collapsed beneath him. When he came to, he was 80 feet away with a broken leg, but no pit remained. This isn't a place that reveals itself to everyone. Only the curious, only the small, only the ones still capable of belief. And that may be the cruelest part of this archive. These sacred sites don't need to drag the child in. They simply wait for the child to step forward, guided by wonder, or called by something older than language. Some say the stillness was once a place of offering. Others believe it is the offering. Either way, the door never closed. Chapter 2, The Echoes at Devil's Spine Ridge. The town of Lathrop, Colorado, is nearly forgotten. A rusted memory tucked against the shadow of Devil's Spine Ridge, where the rocks bend upward like vertebrae clawing through the earth. The locals joke that the mountains here keep secrets better than coffins, but no one laughs when you mention the Hollow Trail. Not really. In 1978, 3 children vanished while hiking that trail. Only one ever returned. Their names were Leo, Clara, and Jonah, ages 11, 9, and 8. They'd followed their Sunday school teacher into the mountains for a nature walk. The teacher stepped away for only 10 minutes to retrieve a forgotten water bottle. When she returned, the children were gone. No signs of a struggle. No shouts. No rustling leaves. The mountain was still. The following morning, Clara stumbled out of the woods barefoot and trembling, her dress torn as if by thorns that had grown inward. When asked where she had been, she muttered only one sentence: "He walks where the church broke the cave." She never spoke again. What investigators found later shook even the hardened forest rangers. A shallow cave entrance carved into the base of Devil's Spine, covered in sandstone etchings, strange spirals and crosshatched figures with no known cultural origin. But stranger still, a makeshift altar inside, built not from wood or stone but human teeth. Over a dozen adult molars cemented with dried blood. None matched Clara or the missing boys. None matched any missing persons cases within 50 miles. What was this place? Old town records buried beneath Lathrop's disused church revealed something darker. In the 1860s, settlers had discovered a native ceremonial site at Devil's Spine. Rather than preserve it, they converted it, literally, by building a wooden chapel directly over the hollow. That church burned down within 2 years. Not from fire, but from within. Witnesses said it cracked from the floor upward, as though the earth was pushing it out. Local tribal lore refers to the site as Sa Zata, which translates roughly to the mouth that pretends to pray. A mimic place. A space where sacredness had been defiled, but something stayed behind. Something that remembered. Some believe Jonah and Leo were never taken. They were kept, by whatever spirit, force, or memory lives in the hollows beneath the spine. Others believe Clara was chosen to return so the place could continue its legend. Not a warning but a whisper. Modern hikers say you can still hear her voice if you stand near the entrance of that cave, soft, broken, repeating, "He walks where the church broke the cave." Most think it's the wind, the others don't come back a second time. Chapter 3. The Hollow beneath St. Brigid's Well. Beneath a field in County Kildare, Ireland, where sheep graze quietly and wind whispers through the hedgerows, there lies a hollow. Unmarked, untouched, and almost entirely forgotten. Just a mile from the famed St. Brigid's Well, a place long believed to hold healing powers, the land dips unnaturally, as if something heavy once sat there. But locals don't tread too close, not even the bold ones. They say the ground there breathes at night. And children? They've always gone missing near it. Quietly. Without struggle. The well, dedicated to Ireland's most sacred female saint, draws pilgrims every year. But before the Christians, this place belonged to the goddess Brigid, protector of poetry, smithing, and childbirth. She was a deity of both creation and destruction. And the space where the well now sits was once a portal that in the 1800s, Catholic missionaries, bent on erasing the last remnants of the old gods, built a church near the well, right beside that strange hollow. Children began disappearing from the nearby village of Moyvale soon after. Always at dusk. Always without trace. The only witness in over 150 years was a blind boy named Aidan, aged 6. He had wandered off during a May Day celebration and returned 2 days later, mud-caked, barefoot, and silent. It took weeks before he spoke again. And when he did, it was only in fractured rhyme. Silver gates below the land / where Brigid's light no longer stands / the song she sang now turns to screams / the well remembers older dreams. That same week, a local nun was found dead near the well, her body bent backward over a stone in the shape of an ancient triskele, an old Celtic symbol often tied to the otherworld. Her hands were raw, nails cracked, as if she'd clawed her way out of something. Or into it. Church records show that the hollow, once thought to be a sinkhole, was sealed by stone masons shortly after. But the seal cracked open again in 1937 during heavy rains. And 2 more children disappeared from Moyvale within a week. The hollow was reburied in concrete this time, with no ceremony, no markers, no name. But names have a way of coming back. In 2020, a local folklorist named Mairead Quinn traced dozens of unsolved disappearances across Ireland, all within a 5-mile radius of St. Brigid's sacred wells. Her conclusion was chilling. Each site corresponded to a pre-Christian worship point, forcibly converted or silenced by churches centuries ago. She called them gagged mouths of the old gods. That same year, Mairead vanished. All that was found was her camera, buried in peat near the Moyvale Hollow. Its final photograph shows a child's handprint pressed into moss-covered stone. A handprint that had no fingerprints. Some say it's myth. Some say it's coincidence. But the children keep disappearing, and the well never dries. Chapter 4. The disciples of the sunken chapel. They called it a chapel, but no records show it ever belonged to any church. Half swallowed by a bog near the Appalachian foothills of North Carolina, what remains of the sunken chapel looks more like the ruin of a stone mausoleum. No steeple, no cross. Just a doorway that descends into blackness, and carvings above it that predate any colonial settlement. Carvings of wide-eyed children, hands raised, not in prayer but in offering. Locals say the chapel was there long before the town of Shallowford formed around it in the late 1700s. Back then, strange fires were seen burning in the woods, and travelers would report the same chilling sight. Children standing motionless in the trees, watching. Never blinking. Never speaking. Just watching. The earliest official record comes from a journal written by a preacher named Elijah Crowthorne in 1791. Sent to reclaim Shallowford from what he described as heretical rot, Crowthorne wrote of an underground sect calling themselves the Disciples of the Bound Flame. He said they believed the bog was a gate to a sleeping god who only heard the voices of children. To awaken it, they needed to give the god what it loved most. Innocence. In his final entry, Crowthorne describes infiltrating one of their midnight rituals. Beneath the boggy earth, past the root-choked stairwell of the sunken chapel, he claimed to find rows of children in white robes, eyes glazed, humming in unison. At the altar stood a man with stitched lips, holding a ceremonial bowl that reeked of blood. Crowthorne never made it back. The journal was found floating in the swamp days later, its last page burned around the edges but still legible. The ground breathes. The hymn grows louder. They do not speak with tongues but with silence. The god is stirring beneath the mire. The god remembers. The town's population dwindled over the decades, and the bog eventually swallowed most of the chapel. But every few years, especially during spring thaws, something happens. A child disappears. No sign. No struggle. Just gone. In 2007, a documentary crew attempted to map the sunken ruins using ground-penetrating radar. What they found was disturbing. A massive subterranean structure beneath the bog, stretching nearly 100 feet long. Not a chapel. A crypt. And in its center, what appeared to be a chamber lined with tiny stone beds, child-sized. One of the filmmakers, Elena Rhodes, left the project days later. Her reason? She believed the chapel wasn't abandoned. In an interview she said, "They're still down there. You just can't hear them because they never scream." She moved to Oregon. 6 months later, her daughter vanished while playing near a marsh. The only trace: a child's robe, white, soaked, and draped across a tree branch. And the strangest part, it was perfectly clean. As if whatever had taken her didn't leave dirt behind. Chapter 5. The monastery that waits for moonlight. You won't find it on maps. Not anymore. Tucked deep into the Carpathian forests of Romania lies the remains of what locals once called Monasteria Lunii, the Monastery of the Moon. No official records detail its foundation, but weathered folklore describes a cloistered order who built their sanctuary around a crater-like depression in the earth. They believed the pit was not a wound in the land, but a mouth. The order's only surviving text is known simply as Scriptura Orbului, the blind one's scripture. Passed down orally for centuries before being transcribed in the 1600s, the scripture details a moon deity that watches through stone, but only speaks when full light breaks the veil. Each full moon, the monks would descend into the crater and chant beneath the light, believing the moon's reflection in the pit was a portal between realms. But the ritual wasn't just song. It required a voice of purity. A child. According to the scripture, the child would be seated in the center of the pit at midnight, eyes closed, lips sealed with silver thread. If the moon was willing, it would bathe the child in light and leave them untouched. If not, the child would vanish before the first crow's call. For centuries this was dismissed as mountain legend. That changed in 1982, when a Polish anthropology student named Renata Jablonska vanished while backpacking through the Carpathians. Her journal, mailed to her professor just a week prior, described a ghost monastery she had reached by following a dirt path that didn't exist on her maps. Her final entry read, "I saw them. White robes. Not walking but gliding across the trees. They pointed to the crater. Something in me said to follow. But I didn't." Renata disappeared 2 days later. Her remains were never found, but hikers later discovered a single photograph buried in a cairn of stones atop the crater. It showed the pit bathed in moonlight, and a child standing in the center, their shadow stretching unnaturally long behind them. Forensics concluded the photo was decades old. Since then, at least 7 children have gone missing near that region, most of them during full moons. Locals refuse to speak of the monastery, but occasionally hikers report strange things. silver thread caught on branches, humming that seems to come from beneath their feet, or the brief image of pale-robed figures standing on the ridgeline, watching. Always watching. A drone team in 2021 attempted a night scan of the area. Their footage, cut short by a sudden malfunction, captured a chilling final frame. The moon reflected perfectly in the crater, and what looked like a pair of small hands reaching up toward the surface. The drone plummeted seconds later. Chapter 6. Beneath the bones of Teotihuacan. The ancient city of Teotihuacan was never built for the living. Or at least, not only for them. While tourists roam its massive pyramids by day, few realize what's buried beneath. Beneath the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent, archaeologists discovered something unexplainable in 2003. A tunnel sealed over 1800 years ago, filled with pools of mercury, hundreds of carved black obsidian eyes, and the skeletal remains of children, many headless, many posed. Some say they were sacrifices, others whisper they were replacements. Locals near the site have long told stories of a hidden chamber deeper than any yet excavated, a vault of living stone where the gods kept their chosen. But this isn't a tale of rituals for rain or good harvests. These are tales of children, spirited away from their villages, their names scratched off family stones, as if they never existed. One such case was officially recorded in 1967. An American woman, Elizabeth Wainwright, visited Teotihuacan with her 5-year-old son, Caleb. During a guided tour, she stepped into a shaded tunnel with a small group. When she emerged, Caleb was gone. Search parties swept the site for days. Sniffer dogs refused to enter a specific tunnel. One growled until its handler collapsed. Officials closed the area, citing unstable ground, and Caleb's case was buried in paperwork. But 40 years later, in 2007, a digital imaging team exploring deeper underground uncovered something chilling. A child's shoe wedged into a wall of mineralized stone. Inside it, folded like a forgotten note, was a brittle photo of a young boy standing before a serpent carving. Written in English on the back in a child's jagged scrawl, "Still here. They glow." The writing matched Caleb's. What makes Teotihuacan terrifying isn't just its scale, it's the silence. No one knows who built it. The city predates the Aztecs, who discovered it already abandoned. They believe the gods once walked there. Some say they still do. In 2020, during the full moon of the Day of the Dead, locals reported a strange vibration through the ground, low, rhythmic, like chanting. Security footage captured flickering lights within the sealed tunnel beneath the Feathered Serpent. Officials claimed it was a power surge. But a leaked audio file from a maintenance worker tells another story. In it, you hear footsteps, then whispering. Dozens of children whispering. They say the tunnel was sealed again with concrete the next day. They say the obsidian eyes are still watching. They say the city sleeps, until the next child is called. Chapter 7. The Silent Choir of Montserrat. In the jagged heart of Catalonia, Spain, nestled among the serrated peaks of Montserrat, lies a centuries-old Benedictine abbey, a sacred place of worship, music, and of vanishing children. Tourists come for the mountain's haunting beauty and the choir boys of Escalania de Montserrat, angelic voices echoing through the monastery's stone corridors. But behind the harmonious facade lies a growing archive of unanswered questions. Over the past century, 9 choir boys have disappeared, each case buried beneath layers of institutional silence and religious reverence. Their names don't appear on plaques. Their beds are reassigned within days, and the locals? They no longer speak their names aloud. The first known disappearance was in 1913. 12-year-old Mateo Alvarez was said to have wandered into the mountain's caves after evening mass. A search party of monks and townspeople scoured the jagged labyrinth of stone. No trace was found, except a single slipper at the entrance of La Cueva de la Santa Cova, the sacred cave where the Virgin of Montserrat was allegedly discovered. That same week, a visitor reported hearing children singing beneath the mountain, a harmony so pure, it made them weep. But no choir was present. No music scheduled. Over time the pattern sharpened, always a choir boy, always between the ages of 10 and 13. Always gone during Lent. Always near the cave or chapel where ancient pre-Christian rituals were once performed. In 1986, a whistleblower monk left the order and published fragments of what he called the Black Hymnal. The book, now out of print and impossible to find, contained lyrics sung in an unknown dialect. Linguists traced them back to Iberian pre-Roman pagan chants, long thought extinct. Within the text were depictions of children offered as vocal vessels, believed to carry divine voices between worlds. Was the modern-day choir a continuation of something far older? One boy's family, the Escuderos, never stopped searching. In 2009, they secretly installed a motion-sensitive camera in the abbey during a midnight vigil. The footage, though grainy, remains chilling. The empty sanctuary slowly fills with fog. Then, faintly, a chorus of unseen children begins to sing. As the fog parts, a boy in 18th-century vestments stands alone before the altar, mouth moving in silence, before vanishing. The abbey denied everything. The family was barred from entering Montserrat again. They now live under assumed names. But here's what the locals still whisper. Montserrat isn't a sanctuary. It's a conduit. And the choir? They're not all singing from this side. Chapter 8. The Stone Mothers of the Himalayas. High in the fog-choked ridges of Himachal Pradesh, India, beyond the reach of paved roads and tourist trails, stand a series of ancient stone statues carved into the mountainside. Locals call them the Stone Mothers. At first glance, they seem like forgotten deities, women with sorrowful expressions clutching infants to their breasts. But the truth buried in these altars is far more sinister. They don't worship these statues. They fear them. Villagers from the nearby hamlet of Barakoti say the statues grow, not over centuries but over months. New folds in their robes. Fresh etchings on their faces. And most disturbingly, the children in their arms changed. In 1981, an ethnographer named Dr. Arvind Batra visited the region to document Himalayan folklore. In his notebook, which was never published, only leaked decades later, he described a strange ritual performed by the village women during eclipses. They would walk blindfolded in a single line, each holding an object wrapped in linen. Batra believed the bundles were symbolic offerings, but the villagers refused to let him see what was inside. The next day he was gone, his tent left zipped from the inside, his satchel still resting by the fire. Only his notebook remained, wedged between the arms of one of the Stone Mothers. Rumors spread. The statues demanded real children, and that the village had a pact. Every few years a child with certain traits, a mark on the foot, a gray streak in the hair, a birth under a blood moon, was chosen. There's a word whispered in the valleys, Mritkanya, which roughly translates to death maiden. These were believed to be reincarnations of a mountain spirit once scorned by the gods, condemned to walk the earth in stone form, luring children back to her arms to rebuild the family she lost in divine war. Satellite imagery from 2003 showed only 5 statues. By 2020 that number had grown to 8. And in one high-resolution image, now removed from public access, the face of the 7th statue bears an uncanny resemblance to a missing girl from Delhi, Ria Kohli, who vanished in 2019 during a family hike in the same district. When her parents were shown the image, the mother fainted. The father tried to sue the Indian Archaeological Survey. The case never made it to court. Today the trail leading to the Stone Mothers is overgrown. Officials blame wildlife threats. But at night, shepherds still hear lullabies echoing through the cliffs, sung in a voice no child should ever know. And in the morning, fresh footprints in the snow. Small. Bare. Leading to the statues but never away. Chapter 9. The choir below the church in rural Poland, nestled between quiet fields and thick pine forests, stands the ruins of Kościoł SW. Marii Sichich, the Church of Silent Mary. Abandoned since 1926, the church has no parish, no bell and no steeple anymore. Its altar is gone, its pews devoured by rot. Yet locals still hear hymns at dusk, angelic, wordless, echoing through the valley. But the voices aren't coming from the church, that they're coming from underneath it. In 1962, a survey team exploring the church's crypt stumbled on a sealed passage behind the crumbled altar, a narrow stairwell spiraling down, seemingly dug out by hand. Only one man, a geologist named Marek Dembski, descended. He never returned. When a second team arrived days later, they found Dembski's flashlight halfway down the stairs, flickering. It was still warm. Authorities sealed the site. But the villagers tell a different story, one never reported in official records. They say the church was never built to preach from above. It was built to trap what lies beneath. Children in the village of Mokrzyca, just a mile away, began disappearing in 1919. 12 in total. All between the ages of 6 and 10. No struggle, no blood, no trace. All vanished near the chapel grounds. Local folklore speaks of an entity named Podspugicy, the one who hums below. A spectral being that lured children with music only they could hear. The legend says its voice changes to match whatever the child most trusts. A mother's lullaby, a sibling's laugh, even the call of a favorite teacher. Once the child answers, they're gone. Not taken, but invited into the earth. Years later, one survivor came forward. Janek Kowal, then 88 years old, who vanished for 2 days in 1925 as a boy. He claimed he followed the sound of singing to the edge of the woods. Then the world blurred. The trees bent unnaturally, like bowing toward something. He remembers descending stairs that never ended, that he said there were children down there. Some weeping, others singing, all surrounded by roots that pulsed like veins. They didn't look hurt. They looked entranced. Janek said he tried to sing along, but something made him stop. A whisper, not a voice, told him, "Not yours. Not yet." When he awoke, he was lying at the foot of the ruined church, hands covered in dirt, his ears ringing. Every child who vanished remains missing to this day. As recently as 2018, paranormal investigators snuck into the ruins with thermal cameras. They captured faint heat signatures beneath the floor, in shapes matching that of crouched human figures. One image. 11 forms, and all of them facing upward, as if still singing, waiting for someone to hear. Chapter 10. The Sandpit Offerings. Kayenta, Arizona, near a disused mining road carved into the Navajo Nation, lies a forgotten indentation in the earth, a shallow sand pit barely marked on maps. To most, it's just another scar on the desert's surface. But to the dying elders, it is called Shilnatani Nile, where the children were led. And for generations they say it called to the smallest among them. Reports begin in 1931, when government records first noted the disappearances of Navajo children from nearby boarding schools, institutions infamous for forced assimilation. At first it was blamed on desert wanderings, escape attempts. But the pattern was precise. Always at night. Always barefoot trails leading northwest, away from the schools, toward the pit. Those trails never came back. One local elder, Atsa Begay, broke silence in 1978 during a taped oral history session. His voice trembled as he spoke. The sand doesn't stay still there. It moves like it's breathing. If a child walks into it, they don't cry. They kneel. Like they're praying. Then they go under. Folklore calls the entity within the sand the echo beneath bones. A shapeless, voiceless being that feeds not on flesh but on remembrance. It lures children who feel forgotten, abandoned, unwanted. Witnesses claim they see no struggle, no resistance. Only peace, as if the children wanted to vanish. One account, buried in a now-defunct 1940s Arizona Health Department memo, speaks of a child, Margaret Etzedy, who vanished from a boarding school dormitory. Her bed was made. Her shoes were left behind. Her last known drawing, found folded in her pillowcase, shows a smiling girl holding hands with the desert. The sun replaced by a black spiral. No police excavation was permitted due to tribal sovereignty boundaries. But those who've stood near the pit speak of a low vibration in their chest, like a heartbeat not their own. Electronics fail. Watches stop. Dogs howl and flee. Most chilling is the echo. At certain times of the year, typically near the winter solstice, travelers report hearing childlike laughter from the direction of the pit. Not playful. Hollow. To even. Like something imitating joy. As recently as 2011, a journalist from Phoenix claimed he saw tiny handprints in the sand after a storm. They were not swept away by the wind. Not even after 2 days. Beneath them, a faint circular depression, as if a body had lain curled there. The pit itself has grown smaller. Locals say it's because it's full. But every few years another disappearance stirs the stories again, and every time, it's a child no one claimed was missed, until the sand whispered otherwise. Chapter 11. The Whispering Steeple. High in the pine-cloaked hills of Vermont, an abandoned wooden church leans into the wind, its frame cracked, its steeple shattered at the tip. The building has no congregation, no records, no name. Yet locals call it the Whispering Steeple. It's been closed longer than anyone can remember. But children still go missing nearby. Always within a 1-mile radius. Always when the wind picks up. In 1965, 3 children from Montpelier vanished while on a school field trip to Morris Hill Preserve. Their chaperones claimed they had stopped for lunch. One moment the kids were playing near a copse of trees. The next, gone, no footprints, no struggle. Just a sharp shift in the air, like a pressure drop before a storm. Later that week, a park ranger reported hearing faint singing near the old chapel ruins. But not hymns, it was children's voices repeating the same phrase. The window is the door. The door is the promise. The ranger went looking. He never returned. The local folklore is older than the church itself. Colonial-era accounts tell of a strange preacher, Reverend Isaac Colborn, who built a worship site deep in the woods in the early 1700s. He spoke of returning the innocent to the eternal mouth of God. When questioned by local clergy, he insisted his church was built over a fracture in the world, a vein of divine emptiness. He vanished, along with his entire congregation, during a snowstorm in 1719. All that was found the following spring were dozens of small shoes, arranged in perfect spirals at the foot of the church. Over the centuries, hikers reported that whenever they passed near the steeple ruins, their children would behave strangely. Some would hum tunes they'd never learned. Others spoke in archaic phrases like, "May I go where the bell tolls?" or, "The light is narrow, mother." A few tried to walk into the woods alone, always toward the same direction, toward the steeple's shadow. The most recent case occurred in 2008. A young boy named Eli Whitcomb was playing hide-and-seek with cousins near the ruins. He never came out of hiding. When searchers canvassed the area, they found only one clue: his digital camera wedged between stones beneath the steeple foundation. Only one photo was recovered. It showed Eli, smiling, holding hands with 3 other children who had never been identified. Behind them was the steeple, whole, restored, and glowing from the inside out. Acoustic researchers who visited the ruins in 2016 discovered that the wind pattern near the steeple formed a low-frequency resonance, similar to infrasound, known to cause disorientation and feelings of dread. One researcher later claimed in an interview, "I heard someone say my name. But it was my own voice, in a child's tone, coming from above me." The church has since been sealed off with fencing. But every spring, locals report seeing small figures near the ruins. Silent. Still. Always watching from beneath the shattered frame. And when the wind blows through the broken wood, some swear the whispers say, "One more will make it even." Chapter 12. The pillars beneath the lake in the heart of northern Wisconsin, under the still waters of Lake Domain, rests a secret no sonar scan can quite explain. Locals talk of a lost village, others mention a sunken temple, but divers who've tried to find it all return disturbed, and some never surface at all. The lake is crystal clear in summer, but beneath 30 feet the world turns murky fast. Not just with silt, but with what some have called liquid silence. And what lies down there? The pillars, they aren't natural. Divers describe them as smooth, carved stone, set in a perfect ring on the lake bed. 12 in total. Each one about 7 feet tall, with symbols etched deep. Not in English, not in any known native language. Some resemble Norse runes. Others are more primitive. One diver claimed they looked older than language itself. In 1982, a teenager named Rachel Meissner went missing during a family camping trip. She was last seen walking toward the lake at dusk, humming to herself. The next morning her footprints stopped right at the shoreline, but there were no signs of a fall, no water disturbance. When police brought in tracking dogs, they refused to go near the shore. What makes it stranger is this. Every 7 years since 1949, a child has vanished within a 10-mile radius of Lake Domain. Always during the spring thaw. Always under similar circumstances. No signs of struggle, no noise, no remains. Locals believe the lake was built on top of something sacred, long before colonists arrived. The Menominee tribe, whose ancestors lived there, avoid the lake entirely. One elder once said, "We used to bury them deep. But the water came and set their hunger free." One account from 1969 details a group of geology students who attempted to explore the lake's floor using new underwater cameras. Their footage showed something impossible. As they passed the stone circle, one of the pillars turned. A slow rotation, deliberate, mechanical. The footage then cuts to static. Of the 3 students, only one made it back to the surface. She was found floating in the shallows, whispering in a trance, "It's not 12 anymore. It's waiting for 13. In 2001, satellite imaging during a drought revealed a geometric pattern in the water. Like faint lines connecting the pillars, forming a sigil visible only from the sky. It lasted 3 days. That week, a 9-year-old named Gabriel Cross disappeared from his bed. His window was open, but no mud, no footprints. Divers looking for his body claimed the water near the pillars felt warm, and that their oxygen tanks drained faster than normal. One diver surfaced in a panic, claiming he saw a boy sitting on top of one of the pillars, smiling with eyes black as oil. Some believe the pillars are not just relics, but receivers, drawing something in. A gateway for an old hunger. A ritual disguised as erosion. Others say the children aren't dead, but taken, transformed, placed into the circle to keep it sealed. That each vanished child becomes a living pillar, standing forever beneath the lake. And sometimes, in the moments just before a storm, the lake glows with a soft, golden light shaped like a ring. Outro. They said the children were just lost, wandered too far, taken by strangers, swallowed by rivers, woods, and the passage of time. But we've followed the trail, that we've mapped the shadows that fall across the same ancient sites, stone rings, submerged ruins, forgotten shrines, places older than the towns built over them. Every place marked sacred in some language becomes a boundary, not to protect what's inside, but to keep us out. In every case we've explored, from the sunken temples of Lake Domain to the sealed catacombs beneath New England churches. One truth emerges again and again. These children didn't vanish at random. They disappeared where the land once spoke, where rituals were silenced and where the old warnings were ignored. Some believe these sites were once channels, places where human offerings fed something far older than religion, and when those offerings stopped, something waited, slept. But children are sensitive to places like this, drawn to them. Or maybe called. So ask yourself, why do the records stop? Why do the old maps differ from what we know today? Why do the names of these places change, again and again, until their past is buried under concrete and convenience? And what happens when we dig too deep? Because maybe children aren't missing. Maybe they're guarding something. Maybe they are part of the seal. A seal we were never meant to break. We end tonight's entry here, but the archive is far from closed. More locations. More signs. More names that faded before they ever got a chance to grow up. If you've seen something, a monument, a ruin, a whispering site marked with flowers and photos long since rain washed, send it in.